For today's meditation, we are reading from the book of Joshua, chapter 22, verses 1 to 9. At the time, Joshua summoned the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh and said to them, "You have kept all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you and have obeyed my voice in all that I have commanded you. You have not forsaken your brothers these many days down to this day, but have been careful to keep the charge of the Lord your God. And now the Lord your God has given rest to your brothers as he promised them. Therefore turn and go to your tents in the land where your possession lies, which Moses the servant of the Lord gave you on the other side of the Jordan. Only be very careful to observe the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, to love the Lord your God and to walk in all his ways, and to keep his commandments and to cling to him and to serve him with all your heart, with all your soul." So Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their tents. And when Joshua sent them away to their homes and blessed them, he said to them, "Go back to your tents with much wealth and with much livestock, with silver, gold, bronze, and iron, and with much clothing. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your brothers." So the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh returned home, parting from the people of Israel at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go to the land of Gilead, their own land of which they had possessed themselves by command of the Lord through Moses. After all the tribes had received their allotments in the promised land, Joshua instituted the cities of refuge. We see in them the heart of God, which is always for the sinner to find safety and forgiveness. While he does not and cannot condone the killing of a man who is made in his own image and likeness, God does distinguish between deliberate and accidental killing and provides for the manslayer a place of refuge. Yet he makes it clear that killing a man pollutes the land, under whatever name it is called, even if committed in the name of sport or medical necessity or personal freedom. This remains the truth even today. In chapter 21, we see other cities and pasture land allotted to Levi among the other tribes. God always provides for those who minister to him. In this chapter, we see how God rewards those who keep the promises. The Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh had possessed the land east of the Jordan before they crossed into the promised land. Moses, by the Lord's command, gave them that land, but stipulated that they should contribute their quota of fighting men among them to join their brothers in the conquest of Canaan. They kept their word and fought along with their brothers till the land was conquered, and all the other tribes had received their allotment. Joshua then gave them his blessing as he sent them back to their inheritance with much wealth. They parted from the tribes west of the Jordan at Shiloh. Here we see in this chapter an example of how a Christian should deal with allegations within a church. Sometime later, the tribes on the western side of the Jordan heard that an altar of imposing size had been built by the Jordan River by the eastern tribes. They immediately leapt to the conclusion that it was meant for worship of God by the eastern tribes. During the time of the patriarchs, they built altars at various places as they sojourned in the land of Canaan. But after Israel's departure from Egypt, God gave them the law of the offerings and sacrifices, and especially of the tabernacle. It was clear that they were to build only one bronze altar to be used for offerings, that too at the entrance of the tabernacle. The dimensions and plan were given in detail to Moses at Mount Sinai, and the altar was built accordingly. Thus the western tribes took the view that the second altar erected by their brothers on the eastern side of the Jordan was a clear contravention of the law of Moses. They thought that pagan worship must have begun in the Israelite tribes on the eastern side of the river. In their zeal, they assembled together at Shiloh to make war against them. It is good to have zeal for the Lord, yet to be acceptable, it must be based on knowledge. So they acted wisely. In verse 13, then the people of Israel sent to the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and half-tribe of Manasseh in the land of Gilead, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, and with him 10 chiefs, one from each of the tribal families of Israel, every one of them the head of a family among the clans of Israel. With the high priest heading a delegation of 10 chiefs, the representatives of the 10 tribes, they set out to investigate the matter thoroughly. Before taking drastic action, they took the time and effort to examine the matter thoroughly. Phinehas presented the allegation to the 2.5 tribes and warned them of the danger and consequences of rebellion against God. He reminded them of 2 examples from Israel's history in which they had to pay a heavy price. First, the instance of Baal Peor, where 24,000 men were killed and the plague stopped only because Phinehas himself executed the sinners who blatantly flouted the commandment of God while the plague was going on. The second was more recent tragedy of Ai, in which 36 of their brothers had to die. The root cause of both was disobedience to the clear commandments of God. The response of the eastern tribes is also noteworthy. They gave their brothers a respectful and patient hearing. They then offered a full explanation for their action, disclaiming all intention to set up a parallel system of worship for themselves. This altar on the east bank of the Jordan was only for a memorial and a witness. It was to keep before the younger generation of Israel on both sides of the Jordan that the eastern tribes were and always have been part of the people of God. It was not to offer sacrifices. They reiterated their commitment towards their Lord and agreed with them wholeheartedly that sacrifices and offerings should only be offered in the place prescribed by God. Phinehas and the chiefs believed what their brothers said in the presence of God and rejoiced in the truth. They were willing and hopeful and ready to be convinced of their brothers' innocence rather than their guilt. They went back and reported what they heard, and the congregation was also pleased. God's people should respond to misunderstanding in the same manner, according to these same principles. It is right to have a concern for holiness before God. It is right to respond with directness and clarity. It is right to confront in love. It is right to seek reconciliation before fighting. It is right to confront those believed to be in error if there is corresponding willingness to help them return to the right way. It is right to accept a valid explanation. It is right to believe the best of one another. Let us open our hearts to each other and live in love. God loves us with a love that forbears all things, believes all things, and hopes all things. Nothing less is worthy the name of love. Let us constantly hear and obey his voice, being kind and tender-hearted towards one another. Thus, we may maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. God bless.